When the cold became warmth, the blizzard hit Chicago without mercy. Weather forecasts had predicted light snow, but nature had other plans. By 8 in the evening, the city transformed into a frozen maze of abandoned cars and shuttered storefronts. Most people had found shelter hours ago, huddled in apartments or subway stations. Waiting for the storm to pass, Naomi Pierce was not one of them. She trudged through knee-deep snow, her thin jacket doing nothing against the bitter wind that cut through fabric like knives. The gallery interview had run late, much later than expected. The owner had kept her waiting for 2 hours before dismissing her portfolio with barely a glance. By the time she stepped outside, the buses had stopped running and the train stations had closed for safety. Her phone battery had died 3 blocks back. Her fingers had gone numb 2 blocks after that. Now she could barely feel her legs as she pushed forward, looking for any shelter, any warmth, anything to stop the violent shaking that had taken over her body. Through the whiteout conditions, she spotted lights. A building. Mercy General Hospital. The emergency entrance glowed like a beacon. Naomi tried to move toward it, but her knees buckled. She caught herself against a concrete wall near the loading dock. Just out of view from the main entrance, she told herself to keep moving. Just a few more steps. But her body refused to obey. The cold had seeped too deep. Her vision blurred. The world tilted sideways, and suddenly the snow beneath her felt almost comfortable. It's almost warm. That was when everything went dark. The doctor's discovery dar. Benjamin Chase had just finished a grueling 16-hour shift. 3 major traumas, 2 cardiac arrests, and countless minor emergencies had left him physically and mentally drained. All he wanted was to get to his car, drive home, collapse into bed. But first, he needed to check the loading dock entrance. During severe weather, homeless individuals sometimes sought shelter there, and he always made sure they were directed to proper warming centers. Before leaving for the night, he pushed through the heavy door, expecting to find nothing but snow and wind. Instead, he nearly stumbled over a body. A woman lay curled against the wall, covered in a thin layer of snow, completely still. Benjamin's training kicked in instantly. He dropped to his knees beside her, fingers searching for a pulse. It was there, but weak and dangerously slow. Her skin felt like ice beneath his touch. Hypothermia. Severe stage. He had minutes. Not hours. Benjamin scooped her into his arms without hesitation. She weighed almost nothing, her body limp and unresponsive. He carried her through the loading dock doors, barking orders at surprised staff members who appeared in the hallway.
Get me a warm room now.
Heat blankets, cardiac monitor, and call respiratory. They moved fast, clearing a trauma bay and setting up equipment. Benjamin laid her gently on the bed, his hands already working to assess her condition. Her lips had a blue tinge. Her breathing came in shallow, irregular gasps. Core temperature would be critically low. We need to get these wet clothes off immediately, he told the nurse beside him. But as his team began gathering supplies, Benjamin looked at the young woman's face properly for the first time. She looked peaceful despite her condition, almost ethereal with snowflakes still melting in her dark hair. Something about her struck him deeply, though he could not explain why. The nurse returned with warming blankets. Doctor, should I take over? Benjamin hesitated for only a second. Protocol said yes, but something made him shake his head. I've got this. Just monitor vitals. The intimate necessity, Benjamin worked with professional precision, but his hands trembled slightly as he began removing her jacket. The fabric was frozen stiff, difficult to maneuver. Underneath, her sweater clung to her skin, soaked through completely. He peeled it away carefully, exposing pale shoulders covered in goosebumps. Her shirt came next. As he lifted it, he realized she wore nothing underneath. He averted his eyes instinctively, focusing on the medical necessity of his actions. This was about saving a life, nothing more. But he felt the weight of the moment, the vulnerability, the intimacy forced by circumstance. He worked quickly, covering her with heated blankets as soon as each piece of clothing was removed. Her jeans were the hardest part, damp denim sticking to her legs. He cut them away with medical scissors, hands steady, despite the uncomfortable awareness of what he was doing. when she was finally wrapped in layers of warming blankets. Benjamin stepped back and took a shaky breath. His heart pounded harder than it had during any of the emergencies he had handled that day. "Core temp is 89 degrees, the nurse reported. "Pulse is strengthening." Benjamin nodded, watching the monitors climb slowly upward. She was going to survive. Relief washed over him, followed immediately by a strange sense of protectiveness toward this woman whose name he did not even know. 20 minutes later, her eyes fluttered open. The awakening Naomi woke to warmth. Actual, genuine warmth that felt like sunshine after endless winter. She blinked slowly, trying to understand where she was. White ceiling tiles. Beeping machines. The antiseptic smell of a hospital. A man stood beside her bed, watching her with concerned brown eyes. He looked tired, with dark hair slightly disheveled and the shadow of stubble on his jaw. He wore blue scrubs and a white coat. "Welcome back," he said gently. "I'm Dr. Chase. You're at Mercy General. You were suffering from severe hypothermia." Naomi tried to speak, but her throat felt raw. She managed a whisper. "How did I get here?" "I found you outside. You had collapsed near the loading dock." She looked down at herself, suddenly aware that she was wearing a hospital gown. Her clothes were gone. All of them. Heat flooded her face, this time from embarrassment rather than warming blankets. Benjamin saw her expression change and understood immediately. "I had to remove your wet clothing. It's standard protocol for hypothermia. Your core temperature was dangerously low. Every second counted." Naomi pulled the blanket tighter around herself, though she was already covered. "Did you see everything?" He held her gaze steadily. "I saw what I needed to see to save your life. Nothing more, nothing less. I'm a doctor, and you were a patient in critical condition." But something in his eyes told her it had affected him more than he was admitting. There was a softness there, a lingering concern that went beyond professional duty. "Thank you," she whispered. "For saving me. You don't need to thank me for doing my job." "But you did more than your job, didn't you?" Benjamin paused. "What do you mean?" "You could have had a nurse handle it, but you stayed." "I can tell." He looked surprised that she had guessed correctly. "I wanted to make sure you were okay." Naomi studied his face. This stranger who had seen her more vulnerable than anyone ever had. She should have felt violated or ashamed. Instead, she felt oddly safe, like he had witnessed her at her worst and chosen to protect rather than exploit that moment. "What's your name?" Benjamin asked softly. "Naomi. Naomi Pierce." "Well, Naomi Pierce, you're going to be just fine, but you need to rest now. We'll keep you overnight for observation." As he turned to leave, Naomi found herself not wanting him to go. "Dr. Chase." He looked back. "Yes. I don't know how to explain this, but I don't feel embarrassed. Not with you. Is that strange?" Benjamin's expression softened in a way that made him look younger, more vulnerable himself. "No, it's not strange at all." He left the room quietly, but Naomi could not stop thinking about the way he had looked at her. Not with desire or judgment, but with something far more powerful. Genuine care. In that moment, stripped of everything, she had been seen completely, and he had responded with nothing but kindness. Outside in the hallway, Benjamin leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. He had saved dozens of lives during his career, performed countless emergency procedures, but something about tonight felt different. Something about her felt different. He told himself it was just the intensity of the situation, the intimacy forced by medical necessity. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. In those moments of removing her wet clothes to save her life, he had felt a connection he could not explain. A responsibility that went beyond doctor and patient. Benjamin had spent years building walls around his heart after losing his wife in a car accident 5 years ago. He had sworn never to let anyone that close again, never to risk that kind of pain. But Naomi Pierce, with her quiet strength and unexpected trust, had somehow slipped past his defenses without even trying, as snow continued to fall outside the hospital windows. Neither of them realized that the storm had brought them together for a reason, that the moment of vulnerability and rescue was just the beginning of something neither expected but both desperately needed. Sometimes saving someone's life means changing your own forever. When paths cross again, 3 weeks passed before Naomi saw Dr. Benjamin Chase again. 3 weeks of replaying that night in her mind, of remembering the gentleness in his hands and the concern in his eyes. She told herself to forget about it, to move on. He was a doctor who had done his job. Nothing more, but forgetting proved impossible. The hospital had waived her emergency room fees after learning about her financial situation. The social worker who processed her discharge had mentioned that Mercy General always needed volunteers, especially in their art therapy program for pediatric patients. Naomi had nodded politely, not really considering it. Yet 2 days later, she found herself filling out volunteer applications online. A week after that, she attended orientation. And now on a cold February morning, she walked through the same hospital doors where Benjamin had carried her in from the storm. She wore paint-stained jeans and carried a bag full of art supplies. Heading toward the children's wing, her heart raced with each step, though she told herself it had nothing to do with the possibility of seeing him again. The hospital was huge. The chances were slim. Naomi spent the morning working with young patients, helping them paint and draw. A 7-year-old girl named Casey showed her a picture of a rainbow emerging from storm clouds. "My mom says that after every storm, something beautiful happens," Casey explained. Her small voice filled with wisdom beyond her years. Naomi smiled. But the words hit deeper than the child could know. During her lunch break, she wandered to the cafeteria. The space buzzed with doctors, nurses, and staff grabbing quick meals between shifts. Naomi found a quiet corner table and pulled out a sketchbook, her fingers moving across the page almost automatically. She was so absorbed in drawing that she did not notice someone approaching until a familiar voice spoke. "Is that the loading dock?" Naomi's pencil froze. She looked up to find Benjamin standing beside her table, a coffee cup in his hand and surprise written across his features. He looked different in the daylight, less exhausted, though still carrying that same quiet intensity she remembered. "Dr. Chase," she managed, her voice catching slightly. "Benjamin, please." Yeah. He gestured to the empty chair. "May I?" She nodded, suddenly aware of how fast her heart was beating. He sat down, his eyes moving from her face to the sketch. She had been drawing the hospital's exterior. The loading dock entrance where he had found her, snowflakes falling around it like frozen stars. "You're an artist," he observed, trying to be. "I volunteer in the pediatric art therapy program now." Benjamin's eyebrows rose. "You came back to this hospital. Social worker mentioned they needed help, and I wanted to give something back." She paused. "Plus, I figured it was time to replace a bad memory with better ones. Was it all bad?" The question came out softer than he intended. Naomi met his gaze directly. "No, not all of it." Silence stretched between them, comfortable yet charged with unspoken words. Benjamin took a sip of his coffee, seeming to gather his thoughts. "I've thought about you," he admitted. "I wanted to check on you, but patient privacy rules prevented me from accessing your records after discharge. I hoped you were okay." "I am. Thanks to you. Keep saying that, but you survived because you're strong. I just provided the medical intervention." Naomi shook her head. "You've provided more than that? You treated me with dignity when I was completely helpless. That matters more than you know." Benjamin looked down at his hands. "I lost someone once. My wife, Rachel. Car accident during a snowstorm. Actually, I was working that night, couldn't leave the hospital. She was coming to bring me dinner." His voice tightened. "By the time the ambulance brought her in, there was nothing anyone could do. I was a doctor, and I couldn't save the person who mattered most." Naomi felt her chest constrict. "Benjamin, I'm so sorry. That was 5 years ago. I threw myself into work afterward, became the doctor who never goes home, who takes every shift, who saves everyone else's loved ones." He looked up at her. "When I found you that night, something in me broke open again. The fear of losing someone, of being too late, but also something else. Hope, maybe. Hope for what? That maybe I could let myself feel something again without falling apart." When emergency strikes, the moment shattered as Benjamin's pager erupted with urgent beeps. He glanced at it, his expression shifting instantly to professional focus. Mass casualty incident. Bus accident on the expressway? He stood quickly. I have to go. Naomi watched him rush toward the emergency department, and without thinking, she followed. The hospital transformed around her as staff mobilized, preparing for incoming patients. She stayed out of the way but could not bring herself to leave. The first ambulance arrived within minutes. Then another. And another. The emergency bay filled with organized chaos as medical teams worked to assess and treat the injured. Naomi spotted Benjamin immediately, his voice calm but commanding as he directed care for the most critical patients. A young nurse rushed past, struggling with an armload of blankets. They tumbled from her grasp, scattering across the floor. Naomi moved without hesitation, helping gather them up. Thank you, the nurse gasped. We need these in Trauma 3. I'll help, Naomi said, following her. For the next 2 hours, Naomi made herself useful wherever possible. She held hands with frightened patients, helped transport supplies, and kept family members calm while they waited for news. She was not medical staff, but she understood fear and helplessness. Sometimes just being present was enough. Benjamin noticed her helping an elderly woman who had been on the bus. The woman was crying, overwhelmed by the chaos around her. Naomi sat beside her, speaking in low, soothing tones, holding her hand until family arrived. When the rush finally slowed, Benjamin found Naomi in the waiting area. She looked exhausted but alert, her clothes bearing smudges of dirt and blood that were not her own. You stayed, he said. I couldn't just leave. You didn't have to help. Neither did you that night in the storm. But you did anyway. Benjamin felt something shift in his chest, a wall crumbling that he had spent years building. There's a saying in emergency medicine, we don't rise to the occasion, we fall to our level of training. But you had no training for this. You just showed up. Maybe that's what people do when they care. The word hung between them, loaded with meaning neither was quite ready to acknowledge fully. When walls come down a week later, Benjamin found himself at the hospital's annual charity fundraiser. He attended every year, fulfilling his obligation as a senior physician, but he always left early, uncomfortable with the social performance required. This year was different. This year, he knew Naomi would be there. The event took place in the hospital's renovated atrium. It's transformed into an elegant space with soft lighting and classical music. Naomi arrived wearing a simple black dress that made her look both sophisticated and slightly out of place. As if she was not quite comfortable in formal attire, Benjamin watched her from across the room. The way she stood near the art display showcasing patient work from the therapy program. She studied each piece intently, genuinely interested in the young artist's creations. He approached slowly, 2 glasses of wine in hand. The rainbow painting is by Casey. She talks about you constantly. Naomi turned, her face lighting up when she saw him. Benjamin, I didn't know you'd be here. Hospital politics. I'm required to make an appearance. He offered her a glass. Though this year, I'm actually glad I came. They moved to a quieter corner away from the crowd. The conversation flowed easily, touching on art, medicine, childhood dreams, and current realities. Benjamin found himself talking about Rachel more openly than he had in years, sharing memories without the crushing weight of guilt he usually felt. She sounds like she was wonderful, Naomi said gently.
Amy?
She was. But she's gone, and for a long time, I thought that meant I should be too. Not literally, but emotionally. I built this life where I existed but never really lived, and now I'm standing here talking to a woman who somehow makes me want to try again, and that terrifies me. Naomi set down her wine glass, her hands trembling slightly. I need to tell you something. That night, when you undressed me to save my life, you weren't the first man to see me that way. But you were the first one who made me feel safe. The first one who didn't take something from me. Benjamin's jaw tightened, understanding flooding through him. Naomi, I'm not telling you this for pity. I'm telling you because you deserve to know why I kept coming back here. Why I volunteer in this hospital specifically. Why I can't stop thinking about you. She took a shaky breath. You showed me that vulnerability doesn't have to mean violation, that being seen can actually mean being cared for. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. I spent 5 years believing I didn't deserve to be happy again, that moving forward meant betraying Rachel's memory. But maybe she would want me to live, not just survive. I think she would. When I look at you, I don't see someone I saved. I see someone who's saving me right back. Naomi squeezed his hand. Then maybe we save each other. They stayed at the fundraiser longer than either had planned, talking until the crowd thinned and staff began cleaning up. When Benjamin finally walked Naomi to her car, the night air was cold but clear, stars visible despite the city lights. Can I see you again? He asked. Not as a doctor, not at the hospital, just as Benjamin. I'd like that. Just as Naomi. He leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to retreat. When his lips met hers, it was gentle, tentative, a question rather than a demand. She kissed him back, her hands finding the lapels of his coat, pulling him closer. When they finally separated, both were breathless. That was Naomi started. Yeah, Benjamin finished. They stood in the parking lot, holding hands like teenagers, neither wanting the moment to end. Around them, the hospital continued its endless rhythm of life and death, crisis and recovery. But for these two people who had found each other in the midst of a storm, the world had narrowed to just this. Just them. Just now, Benjamin drove home that night with a lightness in his chest he had not felt in 5 years. Naomi lay in bed, sketching his face from memory, capturing the way he looked at her like she was both fragile and strong at the same time. Neither of them knew that they're fragile. New beginning was about to face its first real test. That the world outside their private moments was about to intrude with judgment and scrutiny. That sometimes being saved is just the beginning of the real challenge. But for tonight, they had hope. And sometimes hope is enough to keep fighting for. When privacy shatters, the photograph appeared online on a Tuesday morning. Someone had taken it at the charity fundraiser with their phone, capturing the moment Benjamin kissed Naomi in the parking lot. The image was grainy but unmistakable, their faces clearly visible under the STREET by noon. The hospital gossip network had exploded. Naomi first learned about it when her volunteer coordinator called her into the office. The woman's expression was sympathetic but concerned. I need to ask you about your relationship with Dr. Chase. Naomi's stomach dropped. Why? The coordinator turned her computer screen around, showing a local healthcare gossip blog. The headline read, Mercy General Dr. Romance's former patient. Ethics violation or love story. The article speculated wildly about the nature of their relationship, questioning whether Benjamin had behaved inappropriately during her treatment. It mentioned her volunteer position, implying favoritism. Worst of all, it included details about the night he had found her, details that should have been confidential. Someone leaked your medical information, the coordinator said quietly. That's a serious HIPAA violation. But right now, the hospital administration is more concerned about the appearance of impropriety. Naomi felt her face burning. Nothing inappropriate happened. He saved my life. I believe you. But perception matters in hospitals. Dr. Chase is being questioned by the Medical Ethics Board this afternoon. When reputations crumble, Benjamin sat in the Ethics Committee conference room, facing 5 senior physicians and 2 hospital administrators. They had reviewed his report from the night he treated Naomi, examined the medical records, and now they had questions. Dr. Chase, the chief of staff, began. You removed this patient's clothing personally rather than having nursing staff assist. Can you explain that decision? Time was critical. Her core temperature was dangerously low. Every second counted, and I was already with her. It was the most efficient course of action. And yet, you had staff available. This was not a field situation where you were alone. Benjamin kept his voice level. In my medical judgment, I made the correct decision. The patient survived without complications. That's what matters. What matters, another committee member interjected, is that you're now in a romantic relationship with this former patient. That calls your judgment into question retrospectively. My personal relationship began weeks after her discharge, long after the doctor-patient relationship ended. I violated no ethics rules, perhaps not technically. But you understand how this looks. Benjamin leaned forward. How it looks is that I saved a woman's life during a blizzard. And weeks later, we developed feelings for each other as two adults. If you're suggesting I should have let her die to avoid potential gossip, then we have very different views on medicine. The room fell silent. The chief of staff cleared his throat. No one is suggesting that, Benjamin, but we need to protect the hospital's reputation. And yours. My reputation is built on a decade of excellent patient care. One photograph shouldn't erase that. It's not just the photograph. Someone leaked protected health information to the media. Until we find out who, there will be questions about your involvement. Benjamin felt cold anger replace his usual calm. You think I leaked my own patient's records to a gossip blog? That's absurd. We're not accusing you. We're simply investigating all possibilities. When courage speaks while, Benjamin faced the ethics board. Naomi sat in her small apartment, staring at her phone. Messages from friends asking if she was okay. Emails from reporters requesting interviews. Comments on social media from strangers dissecting her life, her choices, her worth. One comment stopped her cold. Gold digger probably faked the whole hypothermia thing to trap a rich doctor. The cruelty of it stole her breath. These people knew nothing about that night, about the terror of feeling her body shut down, about waking up confused and vulnerable. They certainly knew nothing about Benjamin's character, about the gentleness with which he had treated her. Her phone rang. Benjamin's name appeared on the screen. Are you okay? He asked immediately. Are you? I heard about the ethics board. They're doing their job. I'm more worried about you. Naomi closed her eyes. Benjamin, maybe we should stop seeing each other, just until this dies down. I don't want to ruin your career, no? The firmness in his voice surprised her. What? I've spent 5 years hiding from life, from feeling, from taking any risks that might lead to pain. I'm not doing that anymore. Especially not now that I've found you, but the hospital. Your reputation will survive. Or it won't. Either way, I'm not walking away from something real because other people can't see past their own judgments. Tears pricked Naomi's eyes. I'm scared. So am I, but I'm more scared of losing you than I am of what anyone thinks. When truth defends, the hospital investigation moved quickly. Within 3 days, they identified the source of the leak, a disgruntled medical records clerk who had been selling patient information to gossip sites for months. The revelation shifted everything. Benjamin requested a meeting with the full medical board, not just the ethics committee. He wanted to address this publicly, on his terms. When he entered the boardroom, he found not just administrators, but also department heads. Senior staff, and to his surprise, Naomi. She sat in the visitor section. Her presence, a quiet show of support. Their eyes met across the room. He gave her a small nod, drawing strength from her courage. I've served this hospital for 10 years, Benjamin began. I've treated thousands of patients, saved hundreds of lives, mentored dozens of residents. My record speaks for itself. But today, I'm not here to defend my medical competence. I'm here to defend something more important, my right to be human. He paused, letting the words settle. On the night of January 14th, I found Naomi Pierce collapsed outside this hospital, suffering from severe hypothermia. I treated her according to protocol. I removed her wet clothing because that's standard care for hypothermia. I acted with professionalism and medical necessity. 3 weeks later, our paths crossed again when she volunteered in our pediatric program. We discovered a connection that had nothing to do with doctor and patient, and everything to do with two people who understood each other's pain and hope. Some of you think that connection is inappropriate, that I should have maintained distance, protected institutional reputation over personal authenticity. But I'm a doctor because I believe in preserving life. Not just biological life, but the fullness of what makes us. Human connection, love, the courage to be vulnerable. He looked directly at Naomi. This woman has more integrity in her smallest gesture than most people have in their entire lives. She came back to this hospital not for me, but to give back to children who needed her. She stayed during a mass casualty incident to comfort frightened patients. She turned a moment of trauma into an opportunity for service. If you want to punish me for falling in love with someone like that, then go ahead. Suspend me, reprimand me, fire me if you must. But don't you dare suggest that what we have is unethical. The only unethical thing here is the judgment we've both faced for daring to find happiness after surviving our own storms. The room remained silent when he finished. Then slowly, Dr. Patricia Hammond, the head of emergency medicine, began to clap. Others joined her, a ripple of applause that grew until most of the room was standing. The chief of staff cleared his throat. Dr. Chase, this board finds no evidence of ethical violations in your treatment of Ms. Pierce or in your subsequent relationship. The investigation is closed. We apologize for any distress this has caused both of you. When love wins outside the boardroom, Naomi waited. When Benjamin emerged, she ran to him without hesitation. He caught her, lifting her off her feet in an embrace that felt like coming home. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered against his shoulder. "Yes, I did. For you, for us, for everyone who thinks they don't deserve love because of their past." She pulled back to look at him. "What happens now?"